The ship groaned under the relentless assault of the storm. The wooden beams strained and creaked, as if the vessel itself was crying out in agony. Waves crashed against its hull with a ferocity that seemed almost personal, as if the sea had a vendetta against the ship and its crew. The mast whipped back and forth, a towering figure of defiance against the storm's rage, yet it too seemed on the verge of surrender. Rain lashed the deck, and wind howled like a demon unleashed from the depths of the abyss. The storm was a symphony of chaos, each element playing its part in the orchestra of destruction. Fear gripped the hearts of all aboard. The sailors, seasoned and brave, found themselves at the mercy of a force they could neither predict nor control.
"Hold fast!" a voice cried out, but it was lost in the cacophony of the storm.
Among them, huddled below deck, was a man named Jonah. He was not a sailor, but a passenger, and his fear was of a different kind. He trembled, not from the cold, but from a fear that ran deeper than the ocean itself. Jonah was running from his destiny, from a calling he could not escape. Running from the very presence of God. He had thought he could hide, that the sea would be his sanctuary. But now he knew better.
"Reef the sails!" another voice shouted, but the command was swallowed by the storm.
The storm had risen suddenly, a tempestuous tantrum of the sea. It was as if the ocean itself had been waiting for this moment, to unleash its full fury. Sailors, seasoned by years on the water, had never witnessed such fury. They battled the elements with all their might, but it was a losing fight. They cried out to their gods, but the storm only intensified. Their prayers seemed to be swallowed by the wind, their pleas drowned by the waves.
"We are doomed!" A sailor's voice broke through the chaos, his face a mask of terror.
Jonas knew. He knew that this tempest was no mere act of nature. It was a divine reckoning, a storm brewed specifically for him. This was the wrath of God, a storm brewed specifically for him. He had tried to flee, but there was no escaping the divine will. The storm raged on, a relentless force of nature, and Jonas knew that his time was running out. The sea would not be his sanctuary, it would be his reckoning. Jonas was a prophet of Israel, chosen by God to deliver his word. He was a man of deep faith and unwavering commitment, known for his piety and dedication to the divine mission. His life was a testament to the power of belief and the strength of conviction. He walked with the Almighty, heard whispers of truth, and carried divine messages. Each day, Jonas would find solace in the quiet moments of reflection, where he felt the presence of God most strongly. His connection to the divine was not just a duty, but a profound and personal relationship. One day, amidst the familiar routine of prayer, a command boomed into Jonas's heart. It was a moment of clarity and purpose, a divine directive that would change the course of his life forever. The weight of the message was immense, and Jonas felt both honored and burdened by the responsibility.
"Go to Nineveh," the voice of God echoed, "a city far from the sanctity of Israel, a place known for its sin and moral decay." The command was clear yet daunting. Jonas was to leave the comfort of his home and venture into the heart of darkness and preach against its wickedness. The task was not just to deliver a message, but to confront the very essence of evil that had taken root in Nineveh. It was a mission fraught with danger and uncertainty, but also with the potential for redemption and change.
Nineveh, the mighty Assyrian capital, was a city steeped in violence and corruption. Its grandeur was overshadowed by its reputation for brutality and moral decay. The streets of Nineveh were filled with the echoes of suffering and the cries of the oppressed. Its inhabitants were enemies of Israel, known for their cruelty and disregard for God. The people of Nineveh had turned their backs on righteousness, embracing a path of wickedness that seemed beyond redemption. They were feared and reviled by their neighbors. To Jonas, the thought of going to Nineveh, of offering mercy to such people, was unbearable. He struggled with the idea of extending compassion to those who had caused so much pain and suffering. The internal conflict was intense, as he grappled with his sense of justice and his duty to God. Fear warred with duty in his heart, and fear won. Jonas decided to flee. He chose to run from his divine mission, hoping to escape the burden that had been placed upon him. But deep down he knew that one cannot outrun the will of God. He boarded a ship heading in the opposite direction, away from Nineveh, away from God's call. He thought he could outrun his destiny, escape the presence of the Almighty. He was wrong. As the ship sailed farther from land, the storm intensified. The sea, usually a source of income and adventure for the sailors, had become a churning cauldron of death. Jonas watched from the hold, his heart a knot of guilt and fear. He knew that he was the cause of this tempest. His disobedience had unleashed the fury of the storm. He heard the cries of the sailors, their desperate prayers echoing his own inner turmoil. The sailors, realizing that this was no ordinary storm, cast lots to determine who was responsible for this divine wrath. The sky was dark, the waves towering, and the wind howled with a fury that seemed almost sentient. Each sailor, drenched and desperate, clutched their lot, praying silently that they would not be the chosen one. The tension was palpable, a heavy weight pressing down on the deck as the lots were drawn. The lot fell on Jonas. The sailors turned to him, eyes wide with a mix of fear and accusation. Jonas, feeling the weight of their stares, knew he could not hide the truth any longer. He confessed his sin, his disobedience to God. His voice trembled as he recounted his flight from the divine command, the mission he had tried to escape. The sailors listened, their expressions shifting from anger to a somber understanding. They realized that this storm was not just a natural phenomenon, but a manifestation of divine displeasure.
"Throw me into the sea," he cried, "and it will become calm." His plea was desperate, his eyes pleading for their compliance. The storm raged on, each wave a reminder of the urgency of his request.
The sailors, hesitant at first, finally yielded to Jonas's plea. They were torn between their fear of the storm and their reluctance to sacrifice a man. But as the ship creaked and groaned under the relentless assault of the waves, they knew they had no choice. As Jonas plunged into the raging waters, the storm ceased. The transformation was immediate and miraculous. The once violent sea became eerily calm, the wind died down, and the clouds began to part, revealing a sky that was slowly clearing. The sea, moments ago a raging beast, fell calm. The sailors, still reeling from the sudden change, looked out over the now placid waters, their hearts filled with a mix of relief and awe. But Jonas's ordeal was far from over. The calm sea was deceptive, hiding the true danger that lay beneath. Jonas struggled to stay afloat, his strength waning with each passing moment. He disappeared beneath the waves, expecting to drown. The water closed over his head, and he felt the cold embrace of the deep, pulling him down into the darkness. Instead, he found himself in a more terrifying predicament. The darkness was absolute, the air thick and oppressive. He realized with growing horror that he was not alone. He was swallowed alive by a creature of immense size, a giant fish sent by God. The creature's mouth had opened wide, and Jonas had been engulfed, swallowed whole into the belly of the beast. This was his new prison, a living tomb where he would confront his fate. Enclosed in the belly of the fish, Jonah entered a darkness more profound than the depths of the ocean.
I was trapped, alone with my thoughts, my fear, and my guilt.
For 3 days and nights he remained in that living tomb, the stench of fish and the churning of its digestive juices a constant reminder of his predicament.
But in that darkness, something profound began to happen. I started to pray.
He cried out to God, confessing his sin, his disobedience, his fear.
I acknowledged God's power and pleaded for mercy, a tiny flicker of hope igniting in the darkness.
God, in his infinite mercy, heard Jonah's prayer. He commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Can you imagine the scene? Jonah, covered in slime and seaweed, crawling onto the beach, gasping for breath, blinking in the sunlight. He had been given a second chance.
As I lay there on the sand, the warmth of the sun on my skin felt like forgiveness. I realized the depths of God's mercy. It was a mercy that extended even to a rebellious prophet, a mercy that offered second chances.
Once more, God spoke to Jonah, repeating his command to go to Nineveh. This time, Jonah didn't hesitate, he didn't run. He had learned his lesson. He set out for Nineveh, a city he dreaded, to deliver a message of repentance.
I walked for days, my heart heavy with the burden of my mission. The closer I got to Nineveh, the more my apprehension grew. I knew my message was harsh, a call for repentance or destruction.
Reaching Nineveh, Jonah was taken aback by its sheer size and grandeur. He walked through its bustling streets, a lone voice crying out in the wilderness of human indifference. He proclaimed God's message, warning of impending judgment if they didn't turn from their wicked ways.
To my astonishment, the people of Nineveh listened. They believed my words.
From the king on his throne to the beggar in the street, we repented in sackcloth and ashes, a city united in seeking God's mercy.
Jonah's story is a testament to the boundless compassion and mercy of God. It's a story about obedience and second chances, about confronting our prejudices and embracing God's plan. God's love extends beyond our limited understanding, encompassing even those we deem unworthy.
Let us learn from my journey. Let us strive to be obedient to God's call, even when it's difficult, even when it leads us to uncomfortable places. Let us never underestimate the power of repentance and the transformative power of God's forgiveness.
For in His mercy we find our hope, our redemption, and our true purpose.